Yeah, we have a big guy on boxing and broadcasting. Lampley is with us, and we're gonna learn how he became so successful on broadcasting boxing. And at the same time, I want to hear about the stories from the famous boxers that they spend time with Jim for decades. So, Jim, thank you so much for being with us.
My privilege.
You know what? Tell me about how you start on the boxing broadcasting live.
I was a total anomaly out of the Cracker Jack box as a sports broadcaster to begin with. I was finishing college at the University of North Carolina in 1974. ABC Sports, which was the dominant network for sports television at that particular moment, developed an idea based on technological evolution, based on things that they had learned radio frequency cameras and microphones would do that they had not thought they would do. They came up with the idea of putting a reporter on the sideline of a football game. Now, that's a convention. It's a cliche. Every football game you watch on television, whether it be college or professional, has reporters on the sideline. But in 1974, I won a talent hunt with 432 candidates to go on the air at ABC Sports as the first person ever to stand on the sideline of a football game with a camera and a microphone. And ultimately, that led me to a variety of other tributaries within the ABC Sports programming concept. I had been there 13 years in 1987 when a new division president came in the door with one predilection about ABC Sports, which is, who is Jim Lampley? Why are we paying him all this money? And how do I get rid of him? And the method that he chose to get rid of me was to assign me to boxing. He believed the audience will see him as the successor to Howard Cosell. They'll never accept it, this preppy white kid being Cosell's inheritor on boxing, and this will bring an end to his television broadcasting career, and we'll get rid of him. What he did not realize at that moment was that the very first sports event my mother had ever sat me down to watch on a television set when I was 6 years old was Sugar Ray Robinson versus Bobo Olson for the middleweight championship in 1955. So I had already been watching and absorbing and paying a lot of attention to boxing matches for 35 years at the moment that he chose assigning me to boxing to get rid of me. Also, he did not realize that the network had signed a get acquainted, look-see contract with a 19-year-old heavyweight from upstate New York whose name was Mike Tyson. So the first 5 or 6 fights I called on network television were all Mike Tyson fights. And eventually, I did leave ABC Sports because it didn't make sense to keep working for a chief executive who hated me. But by that time, I was on my way, and as soon as I stepped out of ABC Sports, I was given the boxing chair at HBO, which was the most prestigious outlet for boxing at that time, and proceeded to spend 31 years calling fights at HBO before a new owner decided to drop it there, and that's the accidental, almost unbelievable context for how I became a boxing blow-by-blow person.
Jim, tell me stories about, for example, Mike Tyson that nobody knows, that you saw what happened with Mike Tyson behind the scenes.
Well, obviously, the Mike Tyson whom I covered was almost like a cartoon character in terms of his public impact and his impact on the sport of boxing. The first fight I called was a fight against a guy named Jesse Ferguson. That day, Mike threw an uppercut in the 4th round that exploded Ferguson's nose. There was blood all over the ring. It was amazingly dramatic and graphic. And shortly after that, the fight was stopped. The person who was working as my expert commentator got into the ring and asked Mike about the uppercut. Tell me something about the uppercut. And Mike said, Katamata taught me that the purpose of the uppercut is to drive the opponent's nose bone into his brain. I was trying to drive his nose bone into his brain. I'm standing at ringside thinking, oh my gosh, look at what I have accidentally happened into here. This guy's not only going to be the number one quote machine in boxing, he's going to be the number one quote machine in sports. And I am now his curator by virtue of the fact that this executive who wants to get rid of me has assigned me to be at ringside to call his fights. And within the next few weeks, all the quotes came rolling out. Boxing is a hurt business. Everybody's got a plan until you hit them. Quote after quote after quote, and Mike grew and grew and grew, and now I was his biographer on television. So we did a few more fights at ABC, and by that time, my agent said to me, look, you know, this is a no-win. This guy wants to get rid of you at any cost whatsoever. Now that you are attached to Tyson the way you are, HBO will want you to call their fights. And I wound up moving directly from ABC to HBO to the boxing chair at the most prestigious network, calling boxing matches. And that went on for another 31 years until December 8, 2018.
Jim Lampley is with us, more than 50 years broadcasting live. And you speak Spanish too. So I want to know how Óscar de la Hoya became your friend and your brother.
Óscar de la Hoya, I first met when he was at the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona, trying to win a gold medal, which he dedicated to his recently deceased mother. It was an amazingly poignant and sympathetic tale, and I wound up doing a series of interviews with Óscar in the midst of that situation. I wasn't calling the fights because my deal with HBO required that I not call fights for another network, but I was doing the, lead-up interviews, the follow-up interviews, et cetera, et cetera. And eventually, we became really good friends, and I called a lot of his most meaningful professional fights, including both of his wins over Julio Cesar Chavez. And during that period of time, we spent a lot of time together in meetings and things like that. And one day he said to me, I want you to understand that I genuinely appreciate you for one thing. And I said, what is the one thing? He said, all the other Anglo broadcasters with whom I deal call me Óscar de la Hoya. You are the one who says Óscar de la Hoya. And that was a gift from an 8th or 9th grade Spanish teacher in Miami who was an absolute stickler for pronunciation and would not let you pass the course unless you pronounced correctly. And that was why I, from the beginning, knew that it wasn't Óscar de la Hoya, it was Óscar de la Hoya.
And that's the way you learn, thanks to your teacher.
Miss Summer. Yes, I can still see her clicking her heels around the front of my 8th grade classroom. But yes, you had to pronounce everything correctly. And that turned out to be a tremendous blessing in a lot of ways, not just with Óscar, but when I wound up going to a lot of discotheques in New York in the 1970s and 80s and 90s and dancing with Colombian girls, Venezuelan girls, Cuban girls, Puerto Rican girls, et cetera, I had the right kind of Spanish pronunciation.
So you were better to speak Spanish or you were better to dance in Spanish music?
Let the girls lead me around.
Jim Lampley.
That was my plan.
You're going to have a book coming up. It's going to be April 15th, but you can start ordering. It happens. It happened is the book that you're going to have. So here, we're going to see all your life.
Do you know the origin of the title?
No, can you let me know?
Okay, so, I've already told you my career is in some ways an accident. I was chosen out of a 432-person talent hunt. Could have been anybody. I didn't expect or foresee that I would wind up calling boxing matches. It was the right thing for me to do. And it happened is from one of my most famous boxing calls, if not my most famous boxing call, which was the night that George Foreman knocked out Michael Moorer, November 5, 1994, to become the oldest heavyweight champion ever. He was, at that moment, my expert commentator working with me on HBO when he wasn't actually in the ring fighting, so I knew George pretty well. And when he landed the shot that knocked Moorer out in the 10th round, and referee Joe Cortez, the count reached 10, and I'm sitting there thinking, this is a historic moment. This is a meaningful moment in boxing. I need to see something tight, crisp, very concrete, that covers this in the best possible way. And what came out of my mouth, not necessarily planned but spontaneous, was, it happened. It happened. I said it twice. And what that touched off was, for years thereafter, I'd be walking down the street in New York, walking down the street here in Las Vegas. Somebody yells from across the street or down the sidewalk, "It happened!" And I realized this is like a signature. This attaches to my name. And it's also a perfect description for all of the unexpected elements of my story. So it's the right title for my book.
What will you do different in your life?
What's that?
What will you do different in your life?
What would I do different? Lots of things. I would apply myself more when I was in school. I would work harder. I would do better at those first 3 marriages. I'm in the 4th one now. I have many, many regrets, and but they don't attach really to my professional life. My professional life, my working life, has been this extraordinary gift where wonderful things have happened to me over and over and over, things that I could not have predicted, couldn't necessarily have asked for, and it's still going on to this day.
In your whole career, Jim Lampley, when was the time that you cried and you still remember that pain of that moment? And why?
Cry?
Yes.
Well, I'm a man who cries easily. My mother was a double widow. She had a very challenging and difficult life. And early on, she recognized that when she would tell me some of the stories she told me, or my grandmother would tell me stories from our family's history, I would cry. And sometimes other males in the family, like my grandmother would say, or not my grandmother, my grandfather would say, "Don't cry, men don't cry." And my mother and my grandmother were the ones who said to me, "Do cry. Men should cry. Men don't cry enough. Showing your feelings is actually more manly than hiding them." So I bought into their way of looking at it. And I have cried on the air, and it embarrasses me. I wish I didn't, but it's like a reflex. And I cry when something inspires me positively, or I cry when something hurts me in terms of vicarious feeling for another person. Those kinds of things have gone on for quite a while, and it's something of a signature. And viewers understand that there are going to come moments when Jim cannot hold back the tears. Particularly December 8, 2018, the night that we said goodbye on the air to HBO Boxing, and my 30 years with that particular franchise were over. I couldn't hide the tears. I was standing with Max Kellerman and Roy Jones. They were choked up too. I was the one who actually had the tears streaming down my face, and I'm in no way ashamed of that. That was a tremendous loss in my life, and it was, to me, irrational, and I still don't understand how the AT&T cell phone salesman who bought HBO thought it was good for the franchise to get rid of boxing. That, to me, was insane.
It's so wise what you were saying, because a lot of parents sometimes, they tell the kids, especially the boys, don't cry, don't cry. But it's important to express your feelings.
Well, I was taught by the women in my life, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It's a sign that you understand that these feelings are important in life, and that if you share them with other people because you just can't hold back, that's real, that's honest, that's who you are, that's what you should be doing. My grandmother and my mother taught me that. Maybe there would have been other people in my formative years who would have taught me a different way. Maybe if my father had lived, he died when I was 5 years old. But at the end of the day, the people who raised me, specifically my mother and my grandmother, made sure that I understood that there was no shame in those tears that would come down my face when I had deep feelings about things. And by the way, people from Spanish culture, French culture, they understand.
We understand.
Yeah. Romance language cultures allow for that kind of emotional expression.
Now, we understand that. And tell me, what is the difference of the boxing fighters of before and the ones now that we have?
Well, fighters from the current generation are so much more aware of the pressures and forces within the marketplace, so much more aware of how the audience sees them and appreciates them. When I first started covering boxing, Mike was actually at the beginning a little bit scared about interviews. Later, he goes and does a one-man stage show, and does it brilliantly, by the way. So gradually, over time, fighters have learned more and more to tell their own stories. Obviously, the first person who perfected that art was Muhammad Ali. And if you're going to do something that mimics something that Muhammad Ali did, that's good, not bad. He was the biggest public figure in the history of boxing.
Everybody wants to be successful in life, Jim Lampley. Tell me, what are the 3 or 5 things that you might have to do either every day to be successful in life?
Whatever your responsibilities are that day, cover all of them and do them the best you can. I didn't do that until I was 23 years old. I short-circuited myself in undergraduate college. I went to graduate school, and even then I was, living off of my natural intelligence and instincts, not necessarily working as hard as I possibly could all the time. But gradually I figured out that there's a scorecard, and that scorecard gets totaled up at the end of every day. And if you did not put in the best possible effort every day, you have no one but yourself to blame. So I couldn't possibly say that I have done everything right every day in my personal life. I don't know that I've been absolutely the best parent I could possibly be, although I think I've done reasonably well looking at my children. But I do know that in my career, I did not fall short of presenting every day the effort that was necessary to be the best I could be.
We're gonna buy Jim Lampley book. It's gonna come out on April 15.
It happened.
It happened. So make sure, please, you buy it. What we're gonna be able to read here? What are the things that we?
Well,
might...
I just gave you the whole book. I just basically summarized everything for you right there. I mean, there are 2 pivotal moments in my narrative. One pivotal moment is that I get chosen out of a 432-person talent hunt to become the first guy who ever stood on the sideline of a football game with a microphone. That convention endures, and a lot of other careers are built off of it, et cetera, et cetera. And then the second thing is that an executive who hated my guts and wanted me obliterated forever decided the way to do that was to assign me to boxing. So, how lucky can you get? There's no logical rationale for how a person like me gets as lucky as I got, unless you want to buy into the idea that if a boy is the son of a twice widowed mother who has to sweat and strain and work to learn all new things as an adult to get her son raised and headed off onto his own life, if you believe that what happened to me was a reward to her for how she weathered the storm of her life and put in the effort and did what she could to raise me, that makes sense. Everything else is just accidental.
Do you remember the first thing that you buy for your mom? When you were able to...
The first thing that I bought for my mom?
Yes.
Well, whatever it was, I bought it with her money.
But when you start really working and you receive your first check, do you remember what it was?
Oh, yeah. I did. When I was working and making a lot of money at first, number one, because I had moved from North Carolina to New York, I was having difficulty dealing with the details of my golden retriever's life and finding people to watch the golden retriever when I was traveling out of New York, et cetera, et cetera. So I bought my mother a house in my original hometown of Hendersonville, North Carolina, and I gave her my golden retriever. And I know for a fact that those 2 things extended her life, helped her to live longer than would otherwise have been the case.
And what a great story. Thank you so much, Lampley, for sharing those gold stories for our people that, they doing every day exactly working for their own dreams. And thank you for sharing us and opening your heart, because that's exactly what we want to imitate. Your mom?
That's the way I live my life every day. And if there are people out there watching this and they are boxing fans and some of them know who I am, some of them are already saying to themselves, look at that. He got through the whole thing without crying. How did that happen? Because they're accustomed to seeing me show emotion. But the bottom line is, your questions are brilliant. You understood my life. Those are the answers.
Thank you so much, Jim. So, guys, make sure, please, you buy the book. It happened. And it's going to be in Amazon. And it's going to be on April 15. Thank you so much because you opening so many doors for so many people so they can have the same dream as the one that you just had.
Gracias.
Gracias a ti.